guys, it's Shay. Welcome back to my channel, Shades of Injustice, where we talk all things social justice, including but not limited to relationships, domestic violence, sexual assault, BLM, racism, and so much more. Today we're going to continue the theme with Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we're going to talk about how you can be a big proponent in stopping sexual assault and what you can do to make sure that the awareness is out there and that you can spot it and stuff like that. So just to refresh, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and the purpose of the entire month is to bring awareness, to educate people and communities on what sexual assault is and how to prevent it. And so it's very important to think about when you have survivors of sexual assault, whether it's your friend, a family member, a loved one, or just anybody in the community, that these people need support. Continued support is very important for survivors of sexual assault. So one thing that you can do to make sure that you stay educated on what sexual assault awareness or sexual assault is to do research, to know what unhealthy relationships look like, to know the red flags to look for, whether it's you that's in that relationship or you have a very close friend or loved one who is in a relationship or in some type of situation. It's also very important to be careful about the language that you use, and I know we talked a little bit about it last video, but we're going to go into further detail about it in this video. So one thing we're going to do is talking about the conversations around sexual assault. One thing that you see happen a lot is that whenever somebody comes out and say that they were sexually assaulted, there's victim blaming going on. Victim blaming is when someone or a group of people are putting all of the blame or most of the blame on the victim or survivor of the assault, saying that they shouldn't have done a certain thing or wore something in particular in order to not be victimized and be attacked. This is a big no-no. It doesn't matter what somebody does, it doesn't matter what somebody wears, they should never be blamed for getting attacked. So being mindful of what you say. Whenever you hear whether somebody's coming to you and saying, oh my gosh, I think I was just assaulted, or you hear it on TV or anything like that, the last thing you want to do is question them and say, well, where were you? What were you doing? That's the last thing they need. What they need is support. They need to hear, oh my gosh, how can I do to help you? What do you need? Do you need me to go to the emergency room with you so you can get a rape kit done? What a rape kit does, or what it entails, is basically the ER staff doing a genital swab just to check for DNA. It's very important to be aware of just like knowing how to support somebody during this trauma, because it is a trauma. They're going to go through the different mood swings and the different, like, what should I have done differently? It's very important to remind the person who comes to you that it's not their fault. They don't need to feel like they're being blamed, because they're already blaming themselves enough for getting attacked. They don't need somebody else being on top of that and attacking them as well. Another thing to be mindful of is rape culture. Rape culture is when rape in and of itself or sexual assault is talked about so much and marginalized so much that it's not seen as a big deal anymore. Whether there's jokes about it, whether the books are about it. Like, even I think I may have talked about this before, I'm not sure, but growing up, anytime I used to watch basketball, I used to say, oh man, that team raped that other team when another team loses. And that's perpetuating rape culture. I did not realize that growing up, that whenever I said that, it was perpetuating the rape culture. And you hear rape and you thinking about, oh, the basketball team or some sports team that lost very, very badly to another team. But being in this profession and becoming more aware, I've realized that that's something that should not be used when you're talking about sports, because rape in and of itself is very sensitive and it shouldn't just be used willy-nilly. So just be mindful of how you use certain lingos and conversations. You never know how using certain lingos and using certain terms can trigger somebody who has been victimized in this way. Another thing to help yourself understand how to prevent or how to be aware of sexual assault is understanding what consent is. And I know that may sound crazy. Like, you're like, oh, I know what consent is. It's a very simple word that you hear all the time, but sometimes it's not so simple. Basically, in a nutshell, consent is when you give verbal authorization for something to proceed, right? So if there is no communication, like I talked about before, if there's no line of communication where you guys were saying, okay, I want to wait to have sex, or I want to wait to do this, and there's no conversation that happens between that point and the point that you guys become intimate, that means that you never really consented. So understanding that, if you're fearful and you don't want to say no, or you're afraid to scream, or you're crying during the act of intercourse or anything like that, that means that you're not consenting. Lastly, I think it's very important, especially on college campuses where sexual assault happens very more frequently than you would think. If you're going out with a group of friends, I think it's very important, and this is just coming from me, but I think it's very important to have a code word or a code phrase when you don't feel safe in a situation. And this will help prevent, hopefully, sexual assaults from happening. If there's a code word that you can text or mouth to your friends, they know to get you out of the situation. It's also very important to understand that sometimes when there's alcohol involved, or date rape drugs involved, it happens more frequently. I've worked with a lot of clients who they've been sexually assaulted and they were given something by some guy they were dating. Didn't understand what was happening to their body, and it prevented them from being able to fight off their attacker. So just be mindful of stuff like that. These date rape drugs they're invisible and they don't have a smell. You would not know if it was given to you. So that's very important as well. So these are just a few things that I just wanted to bring to your attention around preventing and making sure that you're aware and bringing awareness to others. So thank you again for joining me for another video as we're taking the shade off of injustices. Talk to you later. Bye.